Hello, I am Richard McNally and I'm the director of You Know Carol.
Hi, I'm James Stedman. I'm the writer of You Know Carol.
And tonight I will be interviewing James about the production. So, James, what's it about?
Well, basically, it's about Carol, a woman called Carol, who goes to her ex-husband's funeral, and it's about her reconnecting with her friends and her family sort of during that week or 10 days around the funeral. That's sort of the basic plot, I guess, as such, but more broadly, it's kind of about the different people we are to different people. Like, so when you're engaging with your boss or your sister or your niece or something, you are always sort of different people, and that those sort of contradictions and the amalgams that sort of go into that, and kind of Carol finding out who she is to herself over the course of those sort of that week, sort of 10 days sort of thing. That's the nutshell, bit of a bigger nutshell than planned, but yeah.
Lovely. So I'm a big fan of yours. I've seen some of your other plays. And what sets this play apart from some of your previous plays, like Blood Music?
Right. Yeah, so I guess the major difference is kind of the size, really, the number of people in the cast. A lot of my previous stuff deals with just a couple of people, or maybe a couple of pairs of characters. And in this one, we've got 7 characters to play with, 7 voices to play with, which was brilliant. It's been really, really lovely, and given the format, the web series format, we actually get to spend quite a sizable chunk of time with each of the characters as well. So it hasn't been like, oh, I've got 7 characters and they all get a little bit. They have their own life and their own backstory and their own ways of engaging with Carol, and so that's been really, really lovely to deal with. And also the format, I mentioned the format specifically, and a lot of the time with I write for the theatre primarily, and there's very often, although the dialogue and stuff is all very naturalistic, there's oftentimes little theatrical quirks or stylized pieces within those theatre productions. Like, so for example, you mentioned Blood Music there. You'll remember that during that there was the blood scenes, which took you out of the narrative and had people just dancing, and the dialogue didn't always flow as naturalistically and stuff, which is a nightmare for the actors, actually. But they did it awesomely. And a similar sort of thing happened with the piece I did for Wimpole Hall, which was The Clock in the Hall. There were a lot of, that was sort of a group of vignettes put together joined together with like timestamps as well. So this is probably my most naturalistic piece as such. That's not to say there isn't a little bit of theatrical jiggery-pokery going on, which I won't spoil necessarily, but there's definitely a couple of episodes which I had a lot of fun with the format with as well. So yeah, I guess that's where we are with how it differs to some extent.
Yeah, okay. So when you were writing, were you particularly aware of the fact that you were writing for a different medium? You were writing for camera rather than writing for the stage. Was that factoring in, or did you just write how you wanted to without that necessarily coming into mind at the time?
That's a really interesting question, actually. So first of all, this was not originally written to be this series. It was a one-off piece. With the episode 1 what eventually became episode 1, which was Carol Kieran's mum. And that was very specifically written for Zoomalogs, because it was written for Write on Zoomalogs series, which is based on Zoom, basically. So the sort of the brief on that really was to write a dialogue, and because it was on Zoom, you wrote it on Zoom. So once that sort of that set was there, then that format and the characters sort of were just started coming more to me, and that format was kind of set, I guess. So you wrote the dialogue. Having said that, dialogue is absolutely one of my favorite things to write. I just enjoy writing it. So in terms of, to the extent that sometimes people will go, can we have a bit more doing stuff at all? So that felt very natural to my milieu, really. I've got 2 characters and they're talking at each other, and it's brilliant. So that setting was really useful for my writing. That's a bit messier than I intended it to be, but yes is the short answer. I think I was aware that I was writing for this particular format.
Great, thank you. So obviously the plays are set over Zoom, and you've written it during the pandemic, and they have been filmed during the pandemic. So an audience member might want to know, to what extent does it or does it not explore the coronavirus pandemic in the story itself? Yeah,
the short answer is it doesn't. The longer answer is, I guess, I didn't really want it to. That was a conscious decision. It's set post-pandemic effectively in my head. Not necessarily super far post-pandemic, but a little bit post-pandemic, when we're a bit more back to normal as such. Whenever and whatever that might look like, because I don't know about anybody else, but me personally, when during this time, it's been tough for everyone, and I feel exceptionally lucky to still be able to be creating and putting this stuff together. But at the same time, so much of your everyday is sort of taken up with pandemic. You can't get away from it. I mean, even if you're just in your house, half of the reason that you're just in your house probably is because of the pandemic. And when I go to engage with entertainment, it's not something I want to be dealing with. There's been a lot of great stuff made during this time about this time, and there will no doubt be a lot made subsequent to this. And once we're far enough on the other side of it, I might feel I want to engage with it again. But for me, I wanted to write it's a bit of escapism again, really. I wanted to write post-pandemic effectively. So yeah, it doesn't engage with the pandemic, although I would say it's probably post-pandemic rather than pre-pandemic, in the sense that it is all set on Zoom, and Zoom is not necessarily a concept that I think I certainly had no concept of before the pandemic. I was only vaguely aware of Skype and hardly ever used it, for example. So the fact that this particular character is contacting and talking to her friends and family via this medium is sort of probably one of the positive legacies of the pandemic, I would say. So that's why that's there. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think a lot of people that I've spoken to aren't looking for entertainment about the pandemic. People do want that escapism.
Sure.
So I think hopefully that will entice people to watch it, knowing that it's just some light viewing, and it shouldn't make them, think too much about the current predicament they find themselves in.
Hopefully.
Were any of the episodes harder to write than others?
Yes, but for for different reasons, actually. There's a couple. I think I mentioned just a minute ago. There was once I had the idea. Once the episode 1 had come together, I was quite lucky in the sense that this was a format, and then lots of other characters started. It sounds a bit weird, but lots of other characters just started sort of talking to me and go like. So I had Carol Kieran's mum, and then I had Katie, who's her niece, and Peggy, who's her mother, and all that kind of stuff. So these characters, and that lent itself to a sort of a format of these calls and what have you. So that side of things was fine. There was one, and in fact, the order in which they almost came to me quite readily as well. But there was one that I needed, which was Jackie's Carol's sister, and it comes about halfway through episode 4, I think, and I couldn't quite get the dynamic, because the dynamic is a little bit antagonistic there, but it's also, there's a lot of love underneath, and trying to hit that tonally was really hard. So I think I even went off and wrote. I sort of started that because I knew it knew where it needed to come, and I think I went off and wrote Peggy, which is episode 5, and possibly even Ryan, which is episode 6 as well, and then came back to Jackie and sort of really worked on it. And I really actually saying that I love what all the actors have done, but what Lucy and Danny have put into that sisterly relationship in episode 4, I was really happy with that, because it was a tough episode to write. And I guess actually there's episode 3 was also a bit tricky in a different way, because there's a lot of these where you have to be aware of who knows what when. Mm-hmm. But because of the specifics of episode 3, again, not spoilery, but there's a specific dynamic going on within that with Matthew, who's Carol's ex-husband, where you had to be even more conscious of who knew what, when, and how. And there was some stuff that the character couldn't possibly have known. So you write this really lovely piece, and you go, get rid of it. Can't use it. It's not. And I guess there's also some that didn't get written. It's 8 episodes altogether. It was it was quite not to say that they won't ever actually, but there's Melanie, who is Kieran's sister, who's Carol's daughter, and she really feels like she should be in there, but she's not. She just didn't happen. By the time the 8 episodes had sort of fallen into place, there wasn't space for Mel. She gets mentioned and stuff, and also Mags as well, who's Carol's other sister. Again, she gets mentioned, and she's a really interesting character. She keeps trying to talk to me, to be fair, but she didn't end up with an episode of her own. But yeah. So that's Well, the original question was, was it, they're hard to write? Yes, some of them were. Some of them came easier than others, and the hardest thing is editing. It always is. Always is. You can write the most lovely dialogue you like, and then you have to go back and go, get rid, and that's hard.
Absolutely. Well, there's some good sequel bait there. I hope that
but that wasn't intentional. But yeah, okay, yeah.
See the light of day sometime. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
So obviously, the show explores family, and with such truth. And I wondered to what extent the show is inspired by real life. So are any of the characters based on people you know? Not necessarily your own family, but maybe.
Yes is a short. Yes. I can't. it was weird. I think I said before that obviously, you know, Carol Kieran's mum was written first, and before there was any intention of making it, of serializing it, and I wrote that as just sort of a thing, and I just wanted to try it for the Zoomalogs and stuff. And when I came back to sort of start serializing stuff, and I came back to that, I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's me and my mum, a lot of it. There's quite, I can't sort of ignore that. The exact circumstances definitely aren't. And I will actually have to say, Carol is not my mum, and that's a good thing. But there are definitely aspects within Kieran and Carol's relationship which do find echoes. And I guess, there's certain circumstances, there always is, of things that actually happen. I mean, the Peggy reminds me a lot of my nan, for example. Excuse me. My nan was an avid crime fiction reader, for example, and the bit about the bingo, that's almost verbatim.
Oh, really?
I mean, that incident, my nan went to the bingo and she hated it, and
right.
That was just a joy to write because of that as well. And I guess just generally, I was mentioning my nan and my mum, and there's my sister as well. I grew up with some very wonderful, strong female characters in my life. There are a lot of so they do tend to permeate a lot, and just generally, you always. I went to a webinar with Russell T Davis recently, and he said something really interesting, which I think is really true when you're writing, particularly you know, when you're writing about sort of more everyday stuff as well. All the characters are you to some extent. There is elements of you in all your characters, and even if they might be a completely different age, they might be a completely different gender, or they're nothing like you, like externally, I guess. But there are, you can't help but write yourself into some of these characters. And I've always sort of I've always listened since a kid as well, and like I say, I love writing dialogue and stuff, and some of the loveliest dialogue is when it just it sounds like it's just fallen out of someone's mouth, and sometimes it has. Sometimes it just sort of ends up on the page. Not very often, but because you do have to tweak it a little bit. It's interesting, I think, how much you have to tweak dialogue in order to make it sound natural. It seems really, it seems a bit odd, but when you're writing dialogue, it's really easy to write these enormous paragraphs. And then you go, people just don't talk like that. And you go through and you edit and you cut down and you interject and stuff. It's a really fun process, but it's a bit exhausting as well. So that's a bit of a diversion, isn't it? But yes, so to some extent, the characters are based in real life, because they always are.
Yeah, you mentioned that the characters are a broad range of age and gender and personality types, and how much you love writing naturalistic dialogue, and you are so good at it. And obviously, you have a background as an improviser, and I wondered whether you feel like your experience as an improviser helps you with getting into the minds of people quite different to yourself and writing dialogue that is very natural. Do you think it's the same skill to some extent, or a skill you have honed through improvisation?
I guess I love improv stuff, and the stuff that I love and that I do most is is sort of this is long form narrative stuff. So it's less the sort of the quick fire jokes and stuff, but there's comedy in it as well, because I always like the light and shade. I mean, it's fine to have the shade there, and it's important, but even in the darkest moments, you've got to have that little bit of laughter there as well. Just the ridiculousness of stuff, even. You can have really dark stuff happening, and then a little bit of humor there as well. This is going completely tangentially, but
spaghetti bollocks, for example.
Sorry?
Like spaghetti bollocks, for example.
Oh yes.
Little teaser for the audience there.
Like exactly. It's a throwaway line, but it's fine. They're having. It's a tricky situation. Obviously, they're talking about the funeral, but somebody's cooking, and they have this meal, the spaghetti bolognese, but they refer to it as spaghetti bollocks, which is because you have silly names for things in families and stuff. But in terms of an improviser, in terms of getting words on the page to start with, that definitely helps. In terms of starting to write, very often, and the dialogues and stuff, it will be as if I'm improvising to start to write. And then, like I say, with scripted stuff, you more often not have to go back and edit, but definitely the initial impetus is definitely improviser based. Yeah.
Great. So do you have a favorite bit of the show? I know that's quite hard to do, but a favorite bit?
Yes, there are loads of bits, I have to admit, and the thing is though, it's with as I keep saying, what the post-production team are doing with it now, because we've wrapped filming, but and it's a slightly unusual process. This is what we're for me anyway, because obviously usually this time we'd still be rehearsing and getting ready to put it on stage, but that's in the can, as they say, and it's with the post-production team, and we keep getting little snippets about what they're doing with it, and my favorite bits keep changing, because there's like this new bit, just seeing we've just seen a mock-up of the opening credits, for example, and I'm like, oh, I'm in love with those now. And I guess there's a complete cop-out, I guess, is the characters, I think, because like I said, I really enjoyed writing them, and we have such an amazing cast, and they've brought such beautiful nuance and changes to the characters that were on the page. I just really enjoy spending time with the characters, and you've got your little favorite lines and stuff, I guess, but if I can be really cheeky and have the characters.
Yeah, you can. I'll allow that.
We allow that. Okay, good.
And you say you love spending time with the characters. If you could go for a meal with one of them, who would you want to go for a meal with?
No, no, it has to be Peggy.
Yeah, okay.
Peggy, it has to be Peggy.
So that's Carol's mum.
Carol's mum, yeah, sorry, Peggy is Carol's mum. I have to, it's because, well, yeah, like I was saying earlier, she reminds me very much of my nan. Yeah. And I loved my nan to bits. We lost her sort of, 15 years ago now? And my nan, as far as I'm aware, my nan could be a bit of an old battle axe, to be perfectly honest. She's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
But to people who weren't me, like her grandson, it's just like butter wouldn't melt sort of stuff, thankfully. Mm-hmm. Obviously that's not true, but that was how the impression. So she was always lovely to me. And she had a very dry sense of humor as well. And I just think Peggy, if you're not Peggy's family, I think Peggy's really fun. Yeah. I think she'd come out with the stories, and she'd be, you'd go for the meal, and she'd, the salad would come, and she'd go, snails off work today or something. I don't know. something more clever than that, but you know, and she'd be regaling you with stories and stuff. And yeah, she's an old battle axe with a soft heart, and I have a real soft spot for those, basically.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I like that. And so lastly, to wrap things up, why should people watch it?
Because it's funny, because it's fun, because the characters are really engaging, because I think it speaks to people's own experience. And I certainly, when writing and certainly having watched it back as well, what people are doing, this idea of being different people to different people, that's resonated with me more strongly watching it back. And certainly people I've talked to as well in the cast and during the filming, they've said it's resonated with them as well. So I think, I think you should watch it because it will be fun and interesting, and it will also tell you a little bit about yourself.
Lovely.
Really
thank you very much. Yeah. As the director and having seen it all, I wholeheartedly agree. All the things you said are very good reasons to come and watch it.